Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a Lunch and Learn session as we take this opportunity to learn about all the important resources that are available to you as a member of the Down Syndrome Association. Today's session brings us to Team Iron Will, presented by Kathy Dobb. Kathy Dobb is a co-founder and director of Team Iron Will, a nonprofit created to champion the intrinsic value of people with Down syndrome as they discover God's plan for their lives. She is a wife and mother of 8 children, including her youngest son, Will, who has Down syndrome and is the motivation behind Team Iron Will. Catherine has worked in youth ministry, crisis pregnancy counseling, and educational resource development. And after Will was born, Catherine redirected her passion for advocacy to focus on ensuring those with Down syndrome would be respected and celebrated at every stage of life. So you can see how much we love Kathy for everything that she does. So I will pass this over to Kathy now. Kathy, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for attending. I'm excited to talk to you about Team Iron Will. You'll notice our logo up there. I just want to point this out because we're actually in the process of a rebrand. And on Friday, World Down Syndrome Day, we're going to be revealing a new logo, new branding. So we're excited about that. But this is the old one. I'll just say first, relentless forward progress is our tagline. It remains our tagline. And it's something my husband came up with. Because it really defines Will, and I'm sure it defines all of your children as well. Like they just have this ability to persevere, to keep going no matter what, whether they're just learning to do a new skill or they're in the hospital trying to get out of the hospital. Like we've just come to think of this as a defining, tagline for Will and for all of our kids with Down syndrome. So I just wanted to say that is why it says relentless forward progress. Now we can't really talk about Team Iron Will without talking a little bit about Iron Will, our son Iron Will. He, as Linda mentioned, he is our 8th child. He's our youngest. He is 4 years old. He'll be 5 in this June. Will was a complete surprise for us. I was 49 years old when he was born, 48 when we found out that we were pregnant. And my husband likes to tell people that the Down syndrome diagnosis for us was not the surprise. It was finding out that we were going to be having another baby when I was 49 and he was 52. That was a huge surprise. And then when we were about 12 weeks along, I guess, we got the Down syndrome diagnosis, got the 99% chance of having Down syndrome. And that was, it was a shock to us. Just because of all the unknowns. We already knew kind of the secret about Down syndrome, if you will. We knew we had a niece with Down syndrome. We had a friend with Down syndrome. So we knew the gift that they are to this world. And we were excited to bring Will into the world. But at the same time, it's shocking because there's so much that comes with that. And then you start Googling and you find out, oh, he's going to have this percentage chance to have this and that. And, you get a little bit scared. So we had that going on too. And then when I was 6 months pregnant with Will, I had to have emergency abdominal surgery. And he was, I can't remember, it was like 24, 25 weeks along when I had to have the surgery. And so that was traumatizing for us because we were terrified of losing him. I had already had 8 miscarriages prior to even becoming pregnant with Will. So, the whole pregnancy was kind of filled with fear, mostly fear around losing him. But he did survive that surgery. I survived that surgery. And then when he was born, we hit another trauma because I started to hemorrhage. He was about 3 weeks early. And the doctors were like whispering in the corner. It was the first time in my life of, delivering children that I'd ever had a doctor kind of whispering in the corner. So that was another kind of terrifying moment for us. So when Will made it here, when I first held him in my arms, it was the most just joyous, miraculous birth you could ever imagine. And it was there in the delivery room that my husband said, he's not Will, he's Iron Will, because this kid beat all the odds. I mean, just the fact that I didn't have a miscarriage, and then he survived this surgery that I had to have. And then he survived the cord being wrapped around his neck 3 times and his heart rate dropping during delivery. Like, we were just overcome with, gratitude that he was here, but also just this admiration for him as a human being and the fighter that he is. So now so we have this new baby. He has Down syndrome. We're learning everything we can. We bring him home from the hospital, and I was terrified because, he's, I'm sure, just like your children, he was so fragile. He didn't even open his eyes for the first 2 days that he was alive. And there was just something different about him. He was more fragile. We did stay awake at night, making sure he was breathing, monitoring his heart rate, and, doing all those things that you just do with a newborn anyway. But all of that was just extra, it was extra. And then, so fast forward just a few months, and we found out, he had a hole in his heart. He still has mild hearing loss. At the time it was moderate. So that picture of him there with the Baja, that was the first day that he put it on. And the first day that he really, we think, heard my voice clearly. So that's become a favorite picture of ours for sure. He also had infantile spasms at 8 months. And so he had some complications in his early life that really, again, taught us what it meant to persevere, because that's what we saw in him. I mean, no matter what was going on, he was smiling, he was happy. The doctors are poking and prodding him. And he was just, he would get over it very quickly. He taught us how to persevere, and he was teaching us how to live life with this attitude of gratitude, really, because we just came to start looking at things a little bit differently. Like, what are we thankful for today with Will, even though we're in the hospital, even though we just got this diagnosis of hearing loss, even though he has infantile spasms? Like, we learned to kind of shift the narrative and look at the beauty in Down syndrome, because even when there's hard, beauty can coexist with that. And it was really Will that kind of taught us that. So when he was about 1.5, I'd say, we started noticing that he kind of wanted to walk, right? Like and we didn't have a walker for him. And I talked to our early intervention therapists, and I think they used to provide through First Steps walkers. Maybe they do again now, but at the time they didn't. There was no option for a walker. And our insurance wouldn't cover a walker. But I really wanted one. And my sister-in-law, who also has a child with Down syndrome, heard about this, and she gave me her walker. And so then I approached the physical therapist and said, hey, if we have a walker, will you let us use a walker with Will? And she said, yeah, of course, we just can't provide you one. So he got this walker. We put a little sling seat in it, and he took off. Like, he went from walking in this thing to running. He had broken his leg, not because of the walker, just he was going down a slide and broke his leg. So even in his little cast, I think he actually has a cast on in this picture, he was running in this thing. And we realized that just the confidence that it built, his ability to kind of interact with the family, it just opened up so many new doors for Will. And it was then that we kind of started thinking about this idea of presuming competence, right? Like with Will, we always presume competence with him, but we also recognize at the same time that he needs extra tools sometimes to get him to the places he needs to be. So we always let him try something first, but then we step in where we need to, like with this walker. Like, we knew he wanted to walk. He was showing us he wanted to walk. And so we gave him the ability to walk with this walker. And really, this is where Team Iron Will was born, because we had received the walker. We had received some other tools for Will from very generous people, at a time when we really couldn't afford any of it because we just had so many medical bills with him. And so as we were getting through that, we thought, why don't we pay this forward? Like, that's what we want to do. We want to pay this generosity forward to other people, because we can't possibly be the only ones that are in this situation where, we have a child that has extra needs, and we just can't afford those things, those extra things that he or she might need to, fulfill God's plan for their lives. So we talked to our early intervention therapists, and they let us know that right here in St. Louis, there were plenty of families that had, needs in this area. And this picture here on the bottom was kind of our first, those are the first toys and therapy tools that we donated. And we gave them all to the First Steps early intervention therapists here in St. Louis. And we just told them, hey, you just make sure that families that need these get them, so that, so that they don't have to buy that extra thing, or that they can't afford, or that they really want for their child. So that's kind of, that's how Team Iron Will was born. And the way that we got the money for this is, in the meantime of all of this, we had started a Twitter account and an Instagram account, and they were kind of both exploding. Before Will, we didn't have any social media, but we started our social media with the express purpose of sharing the beauty of Down syndrome with the world, because we just didn't want to hide Will's light under a bushel. We wanted everybody to see, and we wanted to share all the joy that he was bringing us. And then, just show everybody how cool it is to have Down syndrome. So through my husband's Twitter account, people were like, hey, we want to donate money somewhere in Will's name. And so we said, okay, we will take it and buy these toys for our First Steps therapists here. So that's what we did. And then we said, hey, you know what? Let's just form a little ministry out of this and see how far God takes it, and see how many people maybe we can help with these resources. So now we get to Team Iron Will. The mission of Team Iron Will is to champion the intrinsic value of individuals with Down syndrome as they fulfill God's purpose for their lives. And we were very specifically added that word intrinsic value, because we believe that our children have value from the moment they are created. And we all know the statistic about how many of our children don't make it here because the abortion rates are so high. So we wanted to make sure we were honoring those children that are not yet born too, and champion their right, their right to life as well. So this is our new mission statement. And then we accomplish this mission in several ways. The first, providing families in the Down syndrome community who are experiencing financial strain with medical and assistive equipment, care packages, developmental tools, and therapy resources. And there's a lot to unpack here in terms of what we do. So the medical and assistive equipment, we provide this little guy up in the corner here. We provided him an adaptive stroller. And actually the very first, let me back up a second, because the very first big piece of equipment that we were able to donate was through the Down Syndrome Association of Greater St. Louis. And it was an adaptive high chair for a young lady, one that she could grow with her into adulthood, because she needed that special chair. And so that was a really touching experience for us to be able to provide that, because we knew how hard her family had worked to get this for her and been denied through insurance. And so we've repeated that several times with other big pieces of equipment, the stroller being another one. And sometimes it's just that families can't, insurance doesn't want to cover it for whatever reason. And some of these pieces of equipment are $1,000, $2,000, and it's just not something, you can come up with. So we provide equipment like that. We also provide smaller equipment. We've done oxygen concentrators. We've done, monitoring systems for like owlets that families can use to monitor heart rate and pulse ox at night. Gait trainers. We've done a couple gait trainers, hearing aids, like you name it. If somebody comes to us with a need, we have a special form they can fill out, and we work with them to see, if we can provide that piece of equipment. And, so far we haven't had to turn anybody down, thank goodness. Then care packages. So I mentioned that Will had infantile spasms, and it's a very rare form of epilepsy. And so we started providing care packages to families in the Down syndrome community who were experiencing infantile spasms, because we know, we went through it with Will, and it's a very difficult diagnosis. It's a lot of sleepless nights. It's, I think there was an entire month where I didn't make dinner for my family, and we just had people gifting us meals. And so we like parents to know they're not alone, because it is such a rare diagnosis. There's a little EEG bear that we partnered with somebody to provide. There's a book, we always send a gift card for a meal. But and then we started a chat on Instagram for families going through it. And right now we have about 50 families who we have helped that have had infantile spasms. And these chats serve to help them walk through the hard times. And then a lot of them stick around to help the new moms that are coming in. So that's been a really just huge blessing that we've been able to provide for people. And then therapy resources. So we've also partnered with Happy Kids Therapy. And if you don't know who they are, you should definitely look them up. They do feeding therapy and speech therapy. They use talk tools. And we have used them for Will. And we've seen just incredible success with Will. We have this plan put together now, and we have these tools that we can use with him to strengthen his jaw and, help him make certain sounds. And so we partnered with them, and we offer partial and sometimes full, but mostly partial scholarships to both their feeding therapy and their speech therapy. So if that's something that you're in need of, we can definitely help with that as well. And I know the woman who runs it, Heather, personally. I can attest to the fact that she's amazing at what she does. She loves the Down syndrome community. She's been helping people with Down syndrome for a good 20, 25 years, specifically with speech and feeding. And she's just had great success. So that is those are the things that we kind of provide that are material through Team Ironwell. Another thing that we do, similar to this Lunch and Learn, we try to help educate families and providers about effective and cutting edge techniques, procedures, and programs, maximize our children's lived experiences with expert-led sessions, offering insight, guidance, and real-life stories. So we host webinars. We've done several on speech therapy. We've done early. This is Will using one of the learning program books. If you're in St. Louis, it's the Marin Fund you need to be in contact with, because they do this as well. And that's actually where we learned about it, was through Marin Fund. We're taking a course right now through Marin Fund. We took one last year. And we got so excited again by the progress that we saw in Will that we were like, we have to share this with the whole world. And the exciting thing there has been that we're able to do these webinars for free. And we've been able to reach people not just in St. Louis and not just in the United States, but all over the world. The last one that we did on speech, we were able to reach people in, Africa and Pakistan, and you're all over Europe. And these are places that don't have any access to therapy. So we're excited to be able to do that. We've done them on financial planning for families in the Down syndrome community. We're getting ready to do one with an airway dentist to explore like palate expansion and what that looks like when it's, a good fit. And the expert that we're bringing in knows people all across the country. So she's going to be able to help people, in different areas. That is another thing that we do, right? We've done 11 webinars to date. We've served 1,200 families through those webinars. So we're excited to continue that and to continue partnering with people, experts that can bring, good information and research-based best practices for our kids. And again, a lot of this stuff we learn about just because we're seeking things out for Will. And when we find something that we love, we just want to share it with everyone, with all of you. This is a program that we are in the middle of working on, and this will launch with our new website on Friday. It's a directory of medical professionals. Right now, we've got about 5 medical professionals who are in it, but the idea on Friday will be to get input from all of you and people across the country, finding out where are those doctors that not only know about Down syndrome, but also champion the dignity, worth, and purpose of every child they serve. I can only speak from my own personal experience, but we have heard from others across the country who have had similar experiences. And we have had some really great medical professionals that we've worked with, and then we've had some that were not so great. And I'll give you 2 examples. One is Will had strabismus, which is where your eyes kind of cross a little bit. And we took him to the eye doctor, and the doctor said, there's probably not anything we're going to do about that. Yeah, they're crossing a little, but we'll just keep an eye on it. We don't need to do anything. And we just accepted that as parents, right? Because oftentimes we just accept whatever the doctor says because they're the doctor. And it's because we have this growing presence on Instagram and Twitter that an eye doctor out in Colorado reached out to my husband and said, hey, Will has strabismus, in all the videos that you're sharing, his eyes are crossing, he needs surgery. I'm going to hook you up with a doctor in St. Louis who will do the surgery. So we met this doctor in St. Louis. We went to him and he was like, yes, Will needs surgery. He did the surgery. Will's eyes are fine. But we kept going back to this first doctor who said, it's not really a big deal. He doesn't really need surgery. And what we learned from these other eye doctors is that oftentimes our children are dismissed because they think, oh, he has Down syndrome. Why does he need to see well? I guess is what they're thinking. And this was driven home for me again when Will is small. He's not quite 30 pounds yet. And we have some issues on my husband's side of the family with growth hormone. So we took Will to an endocrinologist and said, went over everything. Hey, he hasn't really, at the time, I don't think he'd gained a pound or grown even a centimeter in like 6 months. And we said, is this a problem? And we're like, well, I don't know, maybe he's just going to be short. And I said, well, is it possible that he's deficient in the growth hormone? And the answer that I got was, he might be, but no one's really studying that in children that have Down syndrome. And even if he is deficient, it's not like we would do anything about it anyway. It's not like Will's ever going to be able to drive. That was the answer that we got, which crushed me as a mom, because I know that people with Down syndrome, maybe not all of them, but they can drive. And I left that appointment and I got in my car. I'm sure some of you have done the same. I bawled my eyes out. I called my husband, and now I was on the warpath. I was like, I am going back in there. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. And my husband, being the wise man that he is, said, why don't you just come home, calm down, send him an email. So I did. And he called me on a Sunday night to apologize, which was beautiful. And he said, he didn't realize how his language came across. He loves people with Down syndrome, and he would be careful in the future not to use language like that, and that he would follow Will's growth pattern and see if maybe this was a problem. But those are just 2 little examples. And we've, heard examples from people all over the country having the same experience where doctors are not giving our children the same type of care that they would a neurotypical child. And it's that, in the back, I don't know if this is any of you guys, but in the back of my mind, I always want to ask when a doctor does that, like, if this was my daughter who's 9 and her eyes were crossing, would we just jump to a solution? Would you say, oh, it's fine, we'll just take a wait and see approach? I think the answer is no, they would not do that. They would absolutely help her. But unfortunately, a lot of doctors do not do that. And so the idea behind this directory of medical professionals, and it's being headed up by a doctor who's a member of our Team Iron Will team. And she and her husband are both doctors, and they're kind of spearheading this. But the idea behind it is to bring parents in and recommend, nominate doctors in your area so that other families can come to us and go, oh, hey, I live in Boise, Idaho, and I need an ENT, and there will be doctors on there who have other families have already seen and can go, yes, you can trust this person. Because we all need that. And we also quickly found with Will that the best place to go for good information is other families, right? And that's why Down Syndrome Association of St. Louis is so awesome, because they have so many families, but there are places in the country that don't have that opportunity. And so we're trying to get to them. And where are the good doctors? Where are the good speech therapists? Where are the good dentists who will take your concerns seriously? Because a lot of doctors just jump right to, oh, he's got sleep apnea. Let's just take his tonsils and adenoids out, which we did. And then we learned, well, there might have been other therapies we could have tried first before we jumped to taking Will's tonsils and adenoids out, because they actually weren't that big. But you only can operate off the information that you have at the time. So anyway, that is why we are doing this directory, and we hope that you will all join us and nominate doctors. I know St. Louis is full of great doctors. I mentioned two that we didn't have such a good time with, but there are lots of really great doctors here in St. Louis. And then we have our online advocacy. So we've, to date, over the last 4 years, we've had over 106 million views and interactions on Instagram and Twitter, which was not expected for us. Like I said, we just started social media to share the joy of raising Will, and it kind of exploded on its own very organically. And so we're just kind of going with it. And the most exciting thing that's ever happened to us is that last year we were contacted by a mom who, I can't remember how far along she was, but they were devastated by the diagnosis and they were considering terminating the pregnancy. And she said, but then she found Will. She found a viral video of this popsicle video that had gone completely viral of Will. And she said she started looking at videos of Will, and she was overcome by how just joyful he was and how awesome he was. And she showed her husband, and they decided to keep the baby. So that was probably the best thing that's ever happened to us. But that's kind of why we started the online advocacy, is to, reach those families who are scared. And, because I'm sure many of you have had this experience too. When Will was born, we were given all this information, and a lot of it was everything that could go wrong. Like, I felt like Will was born and somebody put a microscope on him and was like, okay, let's just talk about all the things that could possibly go wrong today and 50 years from now. Like, he might develop, Alzheimer's. He might, whatever, he might have a hole in his heart, which he did. And it's like, you forget, because you're so overcome with all of the negative stuff, you forget to pay attention to the joyful parts of it. And so we just want to put a focus there on the joy. And we do share the hard, but we always share the beauty in the hard places too, because we think that's really important to remind people that nobody's life is perfect. Nobody gets a guarantee. We do have 8 children. And so for us, we already knew that, children get sick, children have medical diagnoses that are unexpected, that our neurotypical children have that. So with Will, yes, he has had more diagnoses than our other children, but we get through it the same way, and like I said before, beauty and hard things and beauty can coexist together. And we just want to share that with people. And going forward too, we really want to celebrate our kids, all of our kids, the big victories, the small victories, and that's the idea of relentless forward progress. We felt like for Will, when he had infantile spasms and ended up in the hospital for a week, he couldn't keep any food down. I mean, he was throwing everything up. He was crying 24/7. We were holding him, bouncing him, rocking him. And so just that moment when he finally could keep food down was a huge victory. And it was like cause for great celebration. So it's not, we believe in celebrating everyone, both the people who are running the marathons and the Ironmen and the people who are models, but also those kids who are just getting out of the hospital, those kids who, take their first step at 5 years old or 6 years old. Like, all of it is worthy of celebration. Or those kids who never take their first step, or maybe they aren't verbal ever, and still worthy of just incredible celebration. And so we just really want to honor through Team Iron Will all of our kids, no matter where they are, because they do have intrinsic value. There is a purpose and a plan for their lives. And we want to walk with people through the hard, but also through the fun, celebratory stuff as well. So this is just where you can find us. We're teamironwill.org. Our email is just info@teamironwill.org. And then we have Instagram, Twitter, we have YouTube. But if you are in need of equipment, medical equipment, therapy equipment, if you're going through something hard and we can walk with you through that, we would love to do that. If you are interested in the speech therapy, just visit our website, and we're excited to talk to you. Thank you for coming here today and spending your lunch hour.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and Team Iron Will. I know you are kind of the representative, you and your husband, but I know there's also a lot of work and a lot of, other things that go into it. So just thank you so much. We definitely appreciate you.